The sirens wailed as firefighters battled the blaze consuming Los Angeles. Amidst the chaos, a tall figure in a soot-stained shirt worked tirelessly, passing out water and guiding survivors to safety. It wasn't until hours later that someone recognized him, Barron Trump. How did the son of one of America's most polarizing figures end up on the front lines of this disaster? And more importantly, why? The answers reveal a side of Barron Trump that no one saw coming. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Los Angeles transformed into a hellscape of orange flames and thick, acrid smoke. The Hollywood Hills, once a symbol of glamour and aspiration, now stood as a backdrop to a city in crisis. Sirens wailed in the distance, their urgent cries a constant reminder of the danger that loomed over every street and neighborhood. Amidst the chaos, a figure emerged from the smoky haze. At first, the exhausted firefighters and frightened residents paid little attention. But as the silhouette drew closer, a wave of recognition rippled through the crowd. Covered in soot, his designer clothes now tattered and stained, stood Barron Trump, the youngest son of the former president. For a moment, the scene fell silent. The crackling of nearby flames and the distant roar of helicopters seemed to fade away as all eyes fixed on this unexpected presence. Barron's face, usually seen only in carefully curated public appearances, was now streaked with ash and sweat. In his hands, he carried a case of water bottles, which he began distributing to the weary first responders and shell-shocked evacuees. "I couldn't believe my eyes," whispered Sarah Martinez, a local shop owner who had been forced to flee her home. "One minute I'm watching my whole life go up in smoke, and the next I'm being handed water by Barron Trump. It was surreal." And the contrast between Barron's usual public image and his current state was stark. Gone was the polished, reserved young man who stood quietly behind his father at political rallies. In his place was a determined individual, his sleeves rolled up, actively engaging with those around him. His actions spoke louder than any words could, challenging the preconceptions many held about the Trump family's youngest member. As Barron moved through the crowd, murmurs of surprise and gratitude followed in his wake. People watched in awe as he comforted a sobbing child, helped an elderly man to a nearby ambulance, and even assisted firefighters in moving equipment. Each action seemed to peel away layers of assumptions, revealing a depth of character few had imagined. Questions swirled among the onlookers. How did Barron find himself in the midst of this inferno? What drove him to put himself in harm's way? The answers remained elusive, but the impact of his presence was undeniable. As the night wore on, Barron's initial actions gave way to more organized efforts. He coordinated with local volunteers to set up a makeshift relief station, using his phone to contact nearby hotels for emergency shelter. His voice, usually heard only in rare interviews, now rang out with authority and compassion as he directed resources and offered words of encouragement. "He just took charge," recounted Michael Chen, a volunteer firefighter. "It was like he'd been training for this moment his whole life. He knew exactly what needed to be done and wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty." Barron Trump's world inside Trump Tower contrasted sharply with the chaos unfolding on the West Coast. His daily routine felt suffocating as he scrolled through images of Los Angeles engulfed in flames. A restlessness took hold, stirring something deep within him. Since childhood, Barron had harbored a secret passion for firefighting, spending hours studying techniques and equipment. As he watched the news coverage, a memory surfaced, a chance encounter with a retired firefighter who had shared stories of bravery and sacrifice. The breaking point came when Barron saw a young girl crying for help, trapped in a burning building. His heart raced and he knew he had to act. The decision came suddenly, like a spark igniting in his chest. But how could he break free from the constant surveillance? And he went to invest in a lock in his house and set up a monitoring system. As night fell over Manhattan, Barron put his plan into motion. He packed a small bag, his fingers trembling with each item he tucked away. The weight of his decision pressed down on him, a mix of exhilaration and fear. Escaping Trump Tower proved challenging. During the shift change, Barron narrowly avoided detection by ducking behind a potted plant when a guard turned unexpectedly. He slipped through a service entrance, blending in with departing staff. The journey to Los Angeles was a blur of adrenaline and nerves. Barron used cash for tickets, switching between buses and trains. He ditched his phone, knowing it could be traced. As the miles rolled by, the gravity of his decision sank in. Arriving in Los Angeles, Barron confronted a scene far more devastating than imagined. The city was shrouded in smoke, the air thick with ash. He made his way to the heart of the disaster, his designer clothes already showing wear. At the makeshift command center, Barron found his purpose. He approached volunteers, offering help. In that moment of anonymity, he discovered a freedom he had never known. The oppressive heat hit Barron like a wall as he stepped into the fire zone. Thick ash and acrid smoke stung his eyes and burned his lungs. Through the haze, he saw firefighters rushing past, their faces etched with determination and exhaustion. Flames devoured everything in their path, painting the sky in angry orange. Barron's privileged upbringing hadn't prepared him for this level of destruction. He watched a family huddled together, faces streaked with tears and soot. Swallowing his fear, he approached them. "Is everyone okay?" he asked, voice hoarse. The mother nodded, clutching her children closer. Some cried, some only screamed. His first attempts to help were clumsy. Struggling to lift a fallen beam, Barron felt a wave of self-doubt. Was he just getting in the way? A firefighter called out, "Kid, we need help with the water supply." Grateful for direction, he rushed to assist, his designer clothes now ruined by ash and sweat. As he worked, Barron overheard snippets about the fire's spread. It threatened densely populated neighborhoods, with some areas still awaiting evacuation. The city's resources were stretched thin. Suddenly, a thunderous crack split the air. A massive oak tree, engulfed in flames, teetered dangerously close. Time slowed as Barron processed the danger. The firefighter beside him froze. Without thinking, Barron lunged forward, tackling the man to the ground. The tree crashed down, showering them with burning embers and debris. For a moment, all Barron could hear was his pounding heart and the roar of flames. Then, hands pulled him up, voices shouting in relief. The saved firefighter clasped his shoulder, respect in his eyes. This brush with death awakened something in Barron. His movements became purposeful, his voice steady as he called out instructions. People began to look to him for guidance, drawn by his calm determination in the face of chaos. As word of his actions spread, Barron sensed a shift in how others perceived him. No longer just a wealthy outsider, but someone willing to risk everything to help. As word of Barron's heroic actions spread through Los Angeles, a wave of disbelief rippled through the city. Social media platforms exploded with conflicting narratives, each one more outlandish than the last. Some praised the young Trump for his bravery, while others questioned his motives, convinced it was all an elaborate publicity stunt. At the heart of the chaos, firefighter Michael Chen found himself bombarded with questions from his colleagues. "Is it really him?" they asked, their voices a mix of skepticism and awe. Chen, still covered in soot from his latest shift, could only shake his head in amazement. "I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes," he admitted, recalling the moment Barron had fearlessly tackled a falling beam to save a fellow firefighter. Local politicians scrambled to make sense of the situation. Mayor Elena Rodriguez held an impromptu press conference, her usual composure slightly shaken. "We appreciate all volunteers who step up in times of crisis," she stated carefully. "But we must also ensure proper protocols are followed for everyone's safety." Her words did little to quell the growing curiosity about the young Trump's unexpected presence in their city. As the day wore on, more eyewitness accounts emerged, each one chipping away at the public's preconceptions. Sarah Martinez, the local shop owner who had received water from Barron earlier, found herself at the center of a media frenzy. "He wasn't what I expected," she told a group of eager reporters, her voice tinged with surprise. There was no arrogance, no entitlement, just a young man determined to help. Not a children's hospital, I murmured, apparently disloyal to a hospital, an experience too common for my taste. The tide of public opinion began to shift as more stories surfaced. Videos circulated of Barron coordinating with local volunteers, his voice steady as he directed people to safety. One clip showed him comforting a sobbing child, his gentle words barely audible over the roar of nearby flames. These glimpses into his actions painted a picture far removed from the privileged, sheltered teen many had imagined. By the age of 15, hundreds of people would be sheltered in the neighborhood, and the shelter would be a primitive sheltered. And the last one, as night fell, an unexpected revelation sent shockwaves through the emergency response teams. Barron, it seemed, possessed an uncanny knowledge of fire behavior and containment strategies. Fire Chief David Thompson recounted a moment that left him stunned. The kid pointed out a potential fire break we'd overlooked, Thompson said, his gruff voice softening with grudging respect. Spire Staff Sergeant Richard's section of the Washington Police Department, replied Thompson said, locating the Washington Police Department. He explained the wind patterns and how we could use them to our advantage. I've got veterans with years of experience who might have missed that. This hidden talent, honed through years of quiet study and observation, challenged everything people thought they knew about the youngest Trump. As the city grappled with this new reality, a tense moment approached that would put Barron's newfound skills to the ultimate test. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie orange glow across the smoke-filled sky, a new crisis unfolded in the exclusive neighborhoods nestled high in the Hollywood Hills. The inferno that had ravaged Los Angeles now threatened the sprawling estates of some of the world's biggest stars. Among them, a familiar face found themselves trapped, their luxurious sanctuary about to become a fiery prison. Barron Trump, still covered in soot and sweat from his earlier efforts, overheard frantic radio chatter about a celebrity's home in imminent danger. Without hesitation, he made a split-second decision that would push his newfound skills to the limit. As he approached the gated community, the heat intensified, and embers rained down like a hellish snowfall. And went on from there. The danger grew day by day. Firefighters, stretched thin across the city, eyed the young man with a mix of concern and curiosity. "Kid, you can't go up there," shouted a veteran firefighter, his face etched with exhaustion. But Barron's determined gaze silenced any further protests. He had come too far to back down now. The winding roads leading to the endangered mansion were treacherous, littered with fallen trees and thick smoke that reduced visibility to mere feet. Barron navigated the obstacles with surprising agility, his earlier experiences in the heart of the inferno guiding his every move. As he rounded the final bend, the true extent of the danger became clear. Flames licked at the ornate gates of a sprawling Mediterranean-style villa, its manicured gardens now a tinderbox waiting to ignite. Through the haze, Barron could make out a figure frantically waving from an upper window. Time was running out. With no regard for his own safety, Barron vaulted over the smoldering gate. The intense heat seared his lungs as he sprinted across the expansive driveway. Onlookers gasped, their smartphones capturing the unbelievable scene unfolding before them. Would this unlikely hero succeed, where even the professionals hesitated? Barron reached the grand entrance, its heavy wooden doors hot to the touch. He wrapped his soot-stained shirt around his hand and wrenched the door open, plunging into the smoke-filled interior. The opulent foyer, with its crystal chandelier and marble staircase, now seemed like a maze of deadly obstacles. "Hello," Barron called out, his voice barely audible over the roar of the approaching flames. A faint response guided him up the stairs, each step bringing him closer to the trapped celebrity. As he reached the top floor, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Oh my God, is that Barron Trump?" The disbelief in the voice was palpable. There, huddled in a master bedroom, was none other than Lady Gaga, clutching her beloved French bulldogs. The pop icon's eyes widened in shock as she recognized her unlikely rescuer. Without wasting a moment, Barron scooped up one of the dogs and guided Lady Gaga towards the stairs. "We need to move now," he urged, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Together, they navigated the treacherous descent, the heat intensifying with each passing second. As they burst through the front door, a collective cheer erupted from the gathered crowd. Firefighters rushed forward, providing oxygen and blankets to the shell-shocked singer and her savior. Lady Gaga, still processing the surreal turn of events, turned to Barron with tears in her eyes. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. She said. As the first rays of sunlight pierced through the smoky haze, Los Angeles began to take stock of the devastation. The city's skyline, once a proud silhouette against the horizon, now stood scarred and broken. Ash floated through the air like gray snow, settling on the shoulders of exhausted firefighters and shell-shocked residents. In the eerie quiet that follows disaster, whispers began to circulate about an unlikely hero who had emerged from the inferno. So, the name Barron Trump was on everyone's lips, but the reactions were far from uniform. Some spoke of him with awe, recounting tales of bravery that seemed almost too fantastical to be true. Others met the news with skepticism, unable to reconcile the image of a privileged teenager with the soot-covered figure who had risked everything to save lives. As the city slowly came back to life, the impact of Barron's actions began to ripple outward. In coffee shops and grocery stores, strangers found themselves locked in heated debates about the young man's motivations. Some saw his actions as a genuine desire to help, while others suspected a carefully orchestrated PR stunt. Mayor Elena Rodriguez held an impromptu press conference on the steps of City Hall, her voice hoarse from a night of coordinating emergency efforts. "In times of crisis, we often discover strength in unexpected places," she said, her eyes heavy with fatigue. "The actions of young Barron Trump, while admirable, also raise important questions about safety protocols and the role of civilians in disaster response." The mayor's measured words did little to quell the growing fervor. Social media exploded with conflicting narratives, each post adding fuel to the fire of public opinion. Videos of Barron's heroics went viral, inspiring both admiration and suspicion in equal measure. In the charred remains of a community center in East Los Angeles, a group of volunteers gathered to begin the long process of rebuilding. Among them was Sarah Martinez, the local shop owner, who had encountered Barron during the height of the crisis. "I don't care about his last name," she said, her voice firm as she swept debris from the sidewalk. "What I saw was a young man who cared enough to put himself in harm's way for strangers. That's the kind of example we need right now." And then, wearing shoes from the very last prompt online, Sarah Barron called the local health department and asked to be considered for possible long-term clients, because the kind of example we need right now. As the day wore on, the physical toll of Barron's ordeal became apparent. Spotted leaving a makeshift medical tent, he moved with the stiffness of someone twice his age. The designer clothes that had once defined him were now nothing more than tattered reminders of a life left behind. In his eyes, a new weariness mixed with determination, hinting at the profound changes wrought by fire and sacrifice. Fire Chief David Thompson, speaking to reporters near a still smoldering hillside, offered a perspective that surprised many. "In my 30 years on the job, I've never seen anything quite like it," he admitted. The kid had insights into fire behavior that some of our veterans might have missed. It makes you wonder what else he's capable of. As the immediate crisis began to subside, a new question emerged. What lasting impact would Barron's actions have on a city known for its deep divisions and celebrity worship? The answer, it seemed, was already taking shape in unexpected ways. As the first rays of dawn broke through the hazy sky, Barron Trump stood alone atop a hill overlooking Los Angeles. The city, once a sprawling metropolis of glitz and glamour, now lay before him like a patchwork quilt of destruction and resilience. Ash still danced in the air, settling on his shoulders like a somber reminder of the chaos that had unfolded. For a moment, Barron closed his eyes, allowing the weight of the past few days to wash over him. When he opened them again, his gaze fell upon his hands, once soft and manicured, now calloused and stained with soot. These hands had lifted beams, distributed water, and comforted the frightened. They were no longer the hands of a sheltered teenager, but of someone who had faced the inferno and emerged changed. Sophie? Now, thank you very much, the man said before opening the door for himself. Sophie buttoned her wall-suit collar. I'm not feeling it, she told the woman, now calloused and changed with soot. As he stood there, the cacophony of the city below faded away, replaced by the echo of his own thoughts. Who was he now? The name Trump had always been a double-edged sword, opening doors while simultaneously casting a long shadow. But here, in the aftermath of disaster, that name had receded into the background. For the first time in his life, Barron had been seen not as an extension of his family's legacy, but as an individual capable of making his own mark on the world. His mind wandered to the moments that had defined this transformation. The fear that gripped him as he first stepped into the fire zone. The surge of adrenaline as he worked alongside firefighters. The profound connection he felt with those he had helped. Each memory was a building block, constructing a new identity that felt both foreign and exhilarating. Day-night was where he grew into a firefighter. His mind wandered back to the memories he'd felt both foreign and exhilarating. Barron's thoughts turned to his family, to the expectations that had always loomed large. The Trump name was synonymous with wealth, power, and controversy. Yet, here he stood, covered in ash and sweat, feeling more alive and purposeful than he ever had in the gilded halls of Trump Tower. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth as he realized that true fulfillment came not from living up to others' expectations, but from following one's own heart. He knew what his heart was. He had lived it deliberately to prepare it for the expectations, but from following one's own heart. The city below was stirring to life, the sounds of recovery replacing the roar of flames. Barron knew that soon the world's attention would turn to him, demanding explanations and dissecting his actions. But in this quiet moment, he felt a sense of clarity that had eluded him for years. The path forward was not about living up to the Trump name or rebelling against it. It was about forging his own identity, one act of compassion at a time. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the scarred landscape, Barron's resolve solidified. He would not retreat to the comfort of his former life. Instead, he would lean into this newfound sense of purpose. The question that had plagued him, "Who am I now?" began to find its answer in the very air he breathed. 2 days before, he had leaned against the wall of prison, his body unraveled and stretched by the time it took to reach it. As the smoke cleared and the embers cooled, Los Angeles began to stir with the first signs of recovery. The city's skyline, once shrouded in darkness, now peeked through the haze, a testament to resilience. Barron Trump's journey from privileged scion to unexpected hero had left an indelible mark on the city's collective consciousness. In the aftermath, conversations buzzed with a newfound sense of possibility. People who had once dismissed Barron as just another Trump now spoke of him with a mixture of awe and curiosity. His actions had shattered preconceptions, forcing many to confront their own biases and reassess their potential for impact. As the city slowly rebuilt, the story of Barron's transformation lingered in the minds of many. It served as a powerful reminder that heroism often emerges from the most unexpected places, challenging us all to look beyond labels and see the potential for greatness in every individual. In times of crisis, it's not our name or background that defines us, but our choices and actions that reveal our true character. Very reasonable people are very sick, are very obsessed, are very hungry,